A little while back on this channel, I made a review for the Desview T2 teleprompter, and I said that it really helped easily and cheaply take my YouTube videos up to another level. I'm actually not using a teleprompter today, so please forgive the roughness of this unscripted video. But with the use of a teleprompter, I could read off more specs for products that I'm reviewing smoothly and accurately. I could talk more without rambling on, and I could get my videos finished in less takes than usual. But while the T2 is compact and lightweight, there are a lot of pros and cons to its design. It's obviously very plasticky. It doesn't fold down any more compact than it is here for easier travel or transport, and the way that it hangs onto the front of your lens can sometimes be a little bit awkward. The app obviously works. I've been using it since I made that initial review, but it is at sometimes overly simple. It can be a little bit buggy at times as well, and just in general, it's not my favorite. Anyway, long story short, today on the other side of me here we have the Pocket Q from Prompter People. As you can see, it's about the same size as the T2. It's not a whole lot more expensive, but it does have a lot in the design and the build quality that makes it feel a lot more professional. Plus today, by watching this video, you can win one of these Pocket Qs for yourself, so stay tuned. Let's get into it. So for those of you who don't want to watch any further, I will throw up some specs and comparisons between these two on screen. But basically, if you've already seen or know about the $119 T2, then this Pocket Q, which comes in at still under $200, is pretty much an upgrade in almost every single way. That's not to mention that Prompter People is obviously a company that specializes in prompters, and just in general, they're a company of very hardworking, dedicated, and professional people. Now, they did send me this Pocket Q for free for this test and review, and so did Desview anyway, so it doesn't really matter. Prompter People will also be sponsoring this giveaway, so they are going to send the winner of this competition the Pocket Q directly, so thank you to them for that. But they have absolutely no say on the content of this review. As always, this is completely 100% my own thoughts and opinions. They have no input except for maybe answering some questions that I maybe had along the way while testing this out. So as always on this channel, this is going to be a unbiased, honest review. Now compared to the T2, which is pretty much entirely plastic, the Pocket Q is based around an all-metal frame, and it has this hard, kind of rubbery feeling shell, and of course that glass in front and some other small parts that we'll go through in this video. We'll take a look at all the parts here in just a minute, but basically the Pocket Q is a very solid and durable prompter. Now that does mean that when the Pocket Q is set up in a similar way to the T2, this comes in at around 850 grams compared to about 340 grams for the T2. That is still pretty lightweight compared to some of the larger, more intense professional and prompters that Prompter People do make, but it's still double the weight of the T2 if that's a concern for you. The full metal design of the Pocket Q also does leave a few rough corners here and there on those metal parts, for example on the corners of that camera sled, and I do wish that they had rounded those off just a little bit more. Now back to that weight difference again, the T2 is made to hang off the front of your lens, so lightweight is key. Keep in mind you're also going to add the weight of your phone on here, but the Pocket Q doesn't hang onto the front of your lens like that, so the heavier weight is for me not quite as big of a deal, and it definitely feels like it's going to last longer with a little bit more abuse, especially if you're packing this away, bringing it on location, and just using it fairly often. If you're using it on a jib or a slider, for example, with something that's already pushing the weight limit, maybe that's going to be a concern for you, but I do think that, as you'll see further on through this video, the way that the Pocket Q mounts also kind of centers that weight distribution a little bit more evenly depending on your camera and your lens and things like that. So depending on the setup, it may be a little bit heavier, but it may also be a little bit less awkwardly distributed. So for something like a slider, it's not necessarily going to be as front heavy, which may be a good thing. Anyway, despite that weight, the Pocket Q can pack down pretty much flat, unlike the T2, which again is just in this form factor all the time. So this is going to be a lot easier if you are packing this away and bringing it on location, or if you're working at home in a kind of temporary setup as a YouTuber, or even just doing some kind of online presentation. I actually don't have a case for it here, but in the future, this design will also include a carry case with space for the glass and everything like that, which will be incredibly handy. But still, even at this point, it wouldn't be hard to go out on Amazon and find a simple, cheap case that could fit this when it packs away. Like I said, this does not mount onto the front of your lens like the T2 does, using these little adapter rings that the prompter can just slide onto. With the Pocket Q, you actually have a couple different ways that you can set it up. You could remove the rear sled and then mount this independently on something like a C-stand, like I have it here. This is actually a C-stand with wheels, and then you could just wheel it into place when you want to use it and wheel it away, which is very quick and easy once you get it set up. But you could also use that rear bracket, which I do have on here right now, to mount your camera directly onto it. And then this is all one unit that you could either, again, mount on top of a C-stand like I have right here, or you could throw a quick release plate for a tripod under here where I have this adapter. You could change it out for a tripod plate, put this whole thing onto a tripod, which is great, again, for on a jib or a slider or something like that. In either case, your lens is going to poke through the hole kind of in the back wall of the prompter, and then there is a fabric cover that you pull over your lens. You can tighten it down so that way there's no light getting into the prompter, which will cause reflections that show up in your image. Now the T2 is listed online as coming with adapters to fit lenses from 49mm up to 82mm. I personally couldn't find the 82mm adapter in my kit. This may have changed after I got my test unit, but it does seem physically like there's enough space that it should fit in there. The hole in the back of the Pocket Q seems to fit lenses that have up to about an 85mm outer diameter, which is pretty much exactly the size of, for example, the Sigma 24-70 f2.8 lens for Sony, if you happen to have one of those, which also coincidentally has an 82mm filter thread. Because of that modular back on here though, I guess you could technically DIY some kind of setup pretty easily, to be honest with you, for lenses, maybe cinema lenses, for example, that have a larger diameter on the lens. Now in terms of focal lengths that you can use with these prompters, and this is a question that I actually got quite a lot on my T2 review, both of these seem to be pretty similar in that anything wider than about 40mm on a full frame camera, the walls of the inside of the prompter will start to come into view. So if you're an APS-C or if you're a micro four thirds, that'll obviously differ with that crop factor, but on a full frame camera, 40mm seems to be the limit. So you'll want something equal to or longer than 40mm on a full frame camera. Now speaking of that, something to consider is if you're using zoom lenses with these, the way that it works is going to be different. With the T2, again, it's mounted directly onto the front of your lens. So if you zoom in and zoom out with a lens that physically extends when you do so, then the whole prompter is going to just move with that and it's not a problem. But since the prompter on the Pocket Q is not physically connected to your lens, it's just poking through the back of it, if you have a zoom lens that does extend, when you zoom that in or out, keep in mind it might bump into the glass. So that's something you want to be careful for if you're changing the focal length of your zoom lens when you have it mounted in here. So although this design is something you see much more often on higher end professional prompters, the T2 does win out in convenience with a zoom lens setup like that. Now for the more techie people out there, the beam splitter glass used in these prompters is a little bit different. The Pocket Q uses 65-35 beam splitter glass and the T2 uses 70-30. I don't think you're really going to see any significant difference in practical use. I will put up some tests on screen though, just to show with and without each of these prompters how it affects both the exposure and the color temperature of your image, if any at all. Now another small detail that I appreciate on the Pocket Q in comparison to the T2 is that phone clamp. Now this is very plasticky compared to the rest of the Pocket Q, but it uses a kind of thumb screw to tighten down on your phone, whereas the T2 uses a spring-loaded phone mount. Every time I use this, obviously the phone mount is very close to the glass, and every time I use it, I'm always nervous that the spring is just gonna snap and fling my phone up into the glass or something like that. It's a little bit awkward. Maybe it's just me, I don't know. But having the thumb screw on there just seems easier. You sit your camera in, tighten it down, and that's it. Also, the T2, as you may be able to see here, has a kind of reversible mount, so that way you can reverse it if you want to use a larger iPad or something like that instead of a phone. With the Pocket Q here, this clip opens up to about 10 centimeters, so if that's not enough for you, this is just attached with a simple screw on the bottom, a 1/4-inch screw with that little thumb dangly thingy that you could easily remove this. So if you have another phone mount or tablet mount that you want to use instead, this is going to be very easy to swap out with other mounts. Whereas, again, you do have the reversible mount on the T2, but to reverse it, you need to actually use a tool. It's not thumb screws or anything like that. It does require a tool. Anyway, we touched on the fact that this does have a kind of modular design. There are a couple of different ways to set it up and to mount it and to mount your camera. So let's just quickly go over the parts that this comes with. We'll break it down, we'll build it up, and we'll show you the different ways that you can use it. So this is it. This is the base of the Pocket Q. And you can see it's got some magnets down the side. It's got magnets on the top, and we'll talk about that in just a second. Also down the bottom here, I did attach this adapter for a C-stand. This one is not from Prompter people, sorry, but they do have their own adapter that you could get from them. And if I take this off, you can see underneath there, we just have some standard screw threads, so you could easily attach a tripod plate or something like that if you wanted to pop this onto a tripod instead of a C-stand like I have here. Now if you look carefully, there's this side here with the Velcro at the bottom, and then there's the other side with a kind of slit in the bottom. And so the slit is the back, the Velcro is the front. And let's take a look at the back first. This is the back plate for cameras. You just stick your lens in here and then tighten it down around your lens like I said. This will just slide right into that space on the back of the frame. It's nice and tight, it's not going to fall out anywhere. There you go. Down here you've got this track, and that's where you're going to slide in this rear sled to mount your camera on. It just slides right down in here, and then once you've got your camera mounted, you can adjust the height for the height of your particular camera and lens setup, and then tighten down these screws here to hold it in place. If we use this rear plate here, we've also got another sled for your phone mount, so that again will just slide right into there. And then of course you'd want to tighten it up usually. You can clip your phone right into here, line it up with that hole, tighten that down. You can mount this clip on either side of this rail, and you can also loosen it to slide it forward a little bit closer to the back of the prompter. And they do also have this kind of clamp type, I guess like a sunshade, a sun hood basically for your phone, so you could clip that on there, roughly speaking, and have a little bit of shade over the opening of the hole so that way light doesn't get in there as much, again, causing any reflections on the inside of the prompter. I never use it this way personally, so forgive me if I'm missing something here. So this is that hard, I said, kind of rubbery feeling shell for the prompter, and there are magnets built into here. So with these magnets in the frame, you can literally just sit this on top, and boom, there's the frame for your prompter. And there's Velcro across the top of here, just like there is across the bottom of the frame. And I've got my glass here in the cloth that they provided just to keep it, clean and everything. And there's also Velcro on this glass, as you can see. And here you can probably see there's Velcro only on the inside, not on the outside, at least on one edge of this. The other has it wrapped all the way around, but this will tell you, obviously, the inside has Velcro, the outside does not. So you know which way to put the glass. Forgive any awkwardness as I do this while trying to look at the monitor, not at the actual prompter. But there we go. That's in. And there's your glass. Okay, so now we've got this rail in the front, which is identical to the rail in the back, and you've got the phone clamp for the clamp that you're going to use for your script. And this is just going to slide in there the same as the sled in the back that you used for your camera. Use these screws to tighten it down, and you can also adjust the height here. And why you would want to do that is because depending on the height, the actual text is going to be reflected at a different point in your prompter. You've got that thumb screw down the bottom, and you can also slide this in and out a little bit, again, to help with where that text is lined up, so that way you're looking at the right spot in the prompter. So I'm going to mount the camera onto the rear sled, and of course you can also attach just a quick release plate, base plate here, so that way if you have a base plate on your camera, you can just go ahead and put that on quickly. For now, I'm just going to screw this directly into the bottom of the camera just to show you. Get your lens in there, and then screw this in. Now you might be able to see the lens through here, so this is where you'd want to adjust the height of your camera to get that more or less centered or positioned where you want it, and then you can tighten down those screws, those thumb screws in the back to hold that in place. Then you can just slide your camera in here so that way the lens is inside of the prompter, not hitting the glass hopefully, and then tighten down that screw to hold everything securely. At this point, with this small of a camera and a lens, it's not really that necessary, but you do have this drawstring down here that you can tighten up to make sure that it's tight around your lens, keeping a good seal for light not sneaking into the inside of your prompter. So after that, we're just going to slide our phone into here, and we'll tighten that clamp down. And this is just an old script that I had from a while ago, so ignore that. But this is the Prompter People's app. You can see the controls there a little bit. Now you might be able to see here that where the center of my lens is not necessarily where the center of my script is. So this is where we would want to adjust the position of the phone a little bit. Adjusting it up and down can make the text a little bit larger or a little bit smaller. So if you have a different size phone, that could be useful. Sliding this in and out will adjust how high it is. So for this position, again, we could change the position of our whole camera as well. If it's not matching up, you could lift the camera up a little bit or lower it down a little bit more. But you can see that sliding this in and out will raise it from almost the bottom of the prompter here, depending on the angle that you may be looking at it from, to the top of the prompter. So we'll get this as low as we can here for the time being for this demonstration. Again, I'm not looking from the front of the camera. This is kind of awkward to do, but we'll get that. And then maybe you can see the lens through here as well as the script. So this is what it's looking like from the front of the camera. And then if I play my script, you can see those lines going down and kind of guiding you. And those lines are pretty much centered up with our lens now. So where you're reading is going to be pretty much looking directly into the lens. And you can adjust the speed and the size of the text and the spacing and everything like that, so that way it will match your reading style, your energy, and everything like that. But again, because of that beam splitter glass, you're seeing this text, but the camera is seeing straight out to you. So that's how a teleprompter works. Just as one last note here, now that we've gone through all of this, because the T2, which I have off camera here, connects to the front of your lens, you can't change the position of your lens within that. So here you can adjust the height a little bit if you need to. And with the T2, the spring clamp also pulls it in as close as possible to the bottom of the body. So you can't adjust the height of the actual phone either. With this, you can adjust the position, how far it is, how far away this way it is. So you can get everything lined up as you want it. And if you have a different sized phone or something, you can line that up so that way it makes the most of the space that you have here to work with. That customizability, that flexibility is something that you don't have in non-pro, I guess you could call it, prompters. So this is, where a prompter like this is really showing prompter people's professionalism and experience in developing prompters like this. Sorry, I'm rambling. No prompter right now, so let's get back to the closing of this video. Now finally, when it comes to actually using these prompters, obviously Desview has their own app like I talked about, and it's alright, it's functional, but I don't love it. Prompter People has a much more detailed app. I mean, it's really, really quite customizable, everything in it, and I generally like it a lot more. Maybe it's a little bit overwhelming, but it is very in-depth. It's a good app, and they do also have another app that you can use on a separate device that works as a remote. So you could use a Bluetooth remote, of course, but they do also have, for example, if you have an iPad and an iPhone, you could put your iPhone in here, you could have your iPad with that remote app on it, and then you could just control it directly from that. So there's kind of flexibility in how you're going to use it. And again, Prompter People are prompter people. So they know what they're doing, and they've been working on this for years. So everything is well developed, well tested, and relatively, as far as I can tell, bug-free. Now it is a little bit more expensive than the T2, but it's still relatively affordable, I think, for a lot of people. And with it, you're getting a better build quality, you're getting a prompter that's designed by people who know prompters, as well as the app that goes along with that. And one of the biggest parts to me is the fact that this breaks down and packs away easily. In certain ways, the T2 is definitely more quick and convenient, so you're getting pro versus convenient, I guess, is the pro and con for both of these. But let me know down below which one you would choose, and also don't forget to check out the video description for a link to enter into the giveaway so you could win one of these for yourself. Otherwise, if you have any questions or comments, please do let me know down below, and I'll do my best to get back to you. If you liked this video or found it helpful, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, subscribe if you haven't already, and as always, thank you for watching.